Madam Chair, we are recording.
Okay, great. Sorry for the delay. We are sorting out some technical difficulties. We will continue now with D1, and I believe we have a delegation. Was there somebody in the lobby, Ms. Harrison, that we would, I believe it is Brian Burley.
That is correct, Madam Chair. I shall admit him now.
Great. Welcome, Brian Burley. Go ahead, please.
Hello. It's just
so you have.
Sorry.
You have 10 minutes. Just giving you some background. You have 10 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Just for the record, it's Byron Burley, B-Y-R-O-N.
Okay,
so I'll get right into it.
Welcome, Byron.
Thank you. So I'm the owner of 9450 Marble Bay Road in the Woodland Shores community, and I'm acting as a delegate today for our neighborhood to talk to you about the Bald Mountain waste and water treatment plant and the odor that emits from that plant, the manholes around the neighborhood, and the lift station on Lakefront Drive. Just getting into it. So Woodland Shores, just for some context, is made up of 48 houses, 46 cabins, and 53 cottages. They all use the Bald Mountain facility. There are an additional 100 homes that are going to be built on a few other plots of land in this area in the coming years. And I've been told over the past couple of years that the money that is collected from residents in this area is used for services in this area. And as a neighborhood, we contribute about $1 million in property taxes annually, as well as we pay a $300 per year sewer hookup fee. So the issue of the smell is a big one for us. Getting into the issue, the odor is being emitted by the Bald Mountain plant, and it is adversely affecting our ability to peacefully enjoy our properties. What was a nuisance a couple years ago is now it's infringing on our right to use our property peacefully. And I'll get into why. The smell is pungent. Okay, so it happens in the early morning, it happens in the late afternoon and evening, and it happens around 9 and 10 p.m. at night or in the early afternoon or later evening. This is the smell of human feces being mixed with chemicals in the plant, and it gets wafted into the air and comes flowing through our houses. So I have on many, many, many occasions had guests to my house sitting in my dining room, and in comes this disgusting rancid smell while we're eating into my house. I have neighbors all around me have the exact same experience. Okay. The issue was first reported to the CBRD in 2015. At that time, residents were told that there weren't enough houses connected to the system and that there wasn't enough effluent flow, which was causing the smell because the waste was sitting there and wasn't being transferred regularly. In 2016, it was reported again, and then in 2018, I made my first complaint. That was 2.5 years ago. At the time, we had 25 houses connected, 53 cottages connected to the system. So the response given about the effluent flow isn't really isn't making logical sense because we've had 70 or 80 homes connected to the system. And as I'm talking to you now, the frequency of the smell happening it's more frequent than it was in the past. So the more homes we're connecting to the system, the more the smell happens. Okay, so I've met with CBRD staff multiple times. I was asked to record the times it happened, to contact the CBRD staff, give them the time it happened so they could determine what process was happening at the plant at that time. I had neighbors sending me messages. We submitted over 20 cases. Okay, so we know why it's happening. I've met on site with Klaus Kuhn and Hamid Hatami and Todd Etherington and other CBRD reps. All were present when the smell happened. You know what's happening, okay? What's next? Neighborhood frustration. So as a neighborhood, I'm coming to you as a delegate, but there are many other people in the neighborhood that are far more upset about the CBRD's inaction about this than I am, okay? Neighbors at this get-together we had in July asked if we should be stop paying our property tax or stop paying our sewer hookup, or if we should be contacting a lawyer because of inaction. So I'm coming to you after going through every single bureaucratic black hole you can put me through for 2.5 years to tell you we are not going to tolerate it very much longer. It will be fixed. If you're going to be adding hundreds of more homes in this area, this issue will be fixed for people who bought in phase one and have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars building their houses. If you're not going to do it, just tell us now and we will go through the courts and figure it out. We want it fixed. We want real action. I'm sick of getting emails back from CVRD staff telling me that, well, we're looking into it and budget approvals and stuff. You've had 2.5 years. I've already been told at the end of last year that the budget was approved for 2021 to fix the problem. Fix the problem. So CVRD has hired a consultant from Arcadis to come and test the air for particulates for health concerns. I've met with that Arcadis rep on site. He's told me that it's going to do nothing for odor. All it does is test for some particulates in the air for health concerns. That is clear. I did pull a Freedom of Information Act request from the CVRD to pull all files for this plant to review them. I have read every single document you have for this that you've allowed me to read. In 2008, McKelney Consulting Services from Nanaimo wrote an environmental impact study where they said on page 9, concerning odors with specific reference to EQ tanks and a need for vents. There is a need for vents as well as the tanks to be connected for gases to be discharged to a common odor treatment facility. I have had probably 10 tours of the Bald Mountain facility, and I have never once been told ever that there is any type of odor mitigation system in place. In fact, on my first trip in, I questioned why there was no carbon filter on one of the exhaust vents from a building on the site. And the rep from the CVRD told me that after he did some investigating, that actually there was supposed to be a carbon filter that was never installed, and it was going to cost us $14,000. And they made sure to tell me of the expense. So the carbon filter was installed, but just from this report that I've read that you have on file in your records, page 9 of this McKelney Consulting Services report for the environmental impact study, I do not believe that there is any facility on site to tackle odor. And that is why I'm here today to talk to you about, because it's been 2.5 years. So I'm going to really get to the end of it because I know it's 10 minutes. Just in conclusion, we would like a timeline. It's been 3 summers. And if the CVR, I've had multiple offers recently from CVRD staff to come out when it's happening. Well, the smell is stagnant for about 15 minutes and then it's gone. By the time I message somebody from the CVRD to come out, it takes 30 minutes to get out here. It's gone already. And then it'll happen again in about an hour, but you're not going to stay for that. We had 50 days of pure heat and no rain. Any one of those days, CVRD staff could have come out, stood around for 15 minutes and smelt it, but nobody came. So we're getting frustrated. We want the problem fixed. We want real action. I'm sick of getting emails and being asked to join meetings and asked to meet up at the site. Just come and fix it, or hire some consultants to come out and give you some advice if the staff don't know what they're doing. I have complete confidence in the CVRD staff to operate the facility. They are very knowledgeable. What I do not have confidence that they know how to fix this odor problem, and you have to bring in consultants to do it. So if anybody on the committee doesn't believe that this is a priority issue, I would ask how long you would accept the smell of your neighbor's feces wafting through your house while you're trying to eat dinner or being woken up in the middle of the night to the smell. Myself and my neighbors have been waiting 2.5 years to get this resolved. So we've been patient. We followed your process. Now we just want some action, please. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burley. I do see Mr. Dennison on with us. And is there any questions from the committee? I turn to Director Wilson. Go ahead, please. Question for Mr. Burley or staff?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Burley, I fully sympathise with everything that you're saying here because we've been going through the same thing in a slightly different way. I have to say, though, we do have a sewage treatment plant here in Cobble Hill that had very, very similar problems. And the CVRD staff actually do have the expertise to fix this. It's a question of whether they when and everything else that they can. I do fully sympathize. Like I've said before, this is not a question, it's more of a statement. I'm sorry, but basically to the other directors who have been involved with this, with all the rest of it. Mr. Dennison will fix it, that much I'm sure, but welcome to my world.
You seeing, is there any other hands, any other questions for staff or Mr. Burley? Go ahead, Director Nicholson.
Well, I have a question for staff. What would be involved to fix this?
Mr. Dennison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, odor's tricky. We actually have we've done some work there. We enclosed there's a preliminary screen that the sewage flows through before going into the plant. And in other plants, that's been the primary source of odors. So we've actually enclosed that, and we do have a carbon filter on that. I guess there must be other odors from other portions. We have had the study being done. The fellow that we've had testing the air quality to make sure it's not an issue or health issue for people has also been, sampling the air just with his background knowledge and his nose, and so that's giving us a bit more information. He'll have a report on all of this with some advice as to what he thinks ought to be improved. Also, we've made arrangements for a process engineer. So that's an engineer that actually specializes in sewage treatment processes and has modeling capacity and that sort of thing to model the system. One of our challenges with this particular plant is that a number, especially the cottages, so most of the residents, those people are full-time, but the cottages are quite intermittent. And people come up for the weekends or other holidays or things like that, and then they disappear again. So we have a highly variable flow, and that's proving to be quite challenging for the treatment plant. And we're seeing that not only perhaps in terms of odor generation, but also in terms of our nitrate numbers, which are supposed to be reduced below 10, but we're really having a challenge with that because of this variability. We've made arrangements for the process engineer to be going up there shortly, and he'll give us a report as to what he thinks might be necessary. We've also discussed this with the developer and for possible funding for works to be required, but we need to know how much it is first before we can get a commitment on that. So we expect to have those initiatives coming forward in the next couple months and hopefully have it addressed. But odor is tricky, and sometimes you can do this and do that and do a number of things, and you think you've got it, and then you don't, and there's still more to do. So we're certainly working on it, and it is a priority, and we've got these initiatives underway.
Thank you so much. A follow-up, Director Nicholson. Go ahead, please. You're on mute.
I'm wondering, Mr. Dennison, if it's possible to give some sort of a firm deadline or timeline for for Mr. Burley and his neighbors on when you will be able to provide them with more information on what can be done and how much it will cost.
Not yet. So we need to, unfortunately, the process engineer is away for an extended period this summer. He's originally European, was back visiting home after some years. And so he's just arrived back on Monday. So we're trying to set it up to meet with him and the developer. And so he has to do an assessment, and then we can get a timeline after he's done that assessment. In addition, the report will be coming in on the odor control company, and they may have some suggestions as well. We're expecting recommendations from them as well. So we need to have those two things in place and to negotiate with the developer to see what kind of funding we can extract from the developer on this. I'm assuming he doesn't want to see, have a reputation for odor on his development because it's got a ways to go yet. So I would say after that's done, then we can give a much better timeline.
Okay, follow up. Go ahead, Director Nicholson.
So just to make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen in in the future, was this a design issue did we design this system, or did the developer design the system and we took it on?
It was designed, Madam Chair, by the original developer, and we took it over. The issue with odors has been growing in recent years, and I'm not sure if that's a change in the pattern of the way people generate wastewater or a change in sensitivity or what, I don't know. For example, the very large JUB facility, which serves Duncan and North Cowichan, is located right in the middle of Duncan, and there's all kinds of homes immediately adjacent to that large treatment plant. And, that's become more of an issue in recent years, and it wasn't so much in the past. So we, this is not the only plant, the Cobble Hill plant, as noted by Director Wilson, we've had issues with. But again, a lot of these plants have been more recent. So it's hard to know exactly, but it is something we are now, trying to develop better rules for how these plants get designed from the get-go, so we avoid the problem in future. And I'm sympathetic. It isn't nice. There's odor issues still in Cobble Hill, not related to the treatment plant, as far as I can tell, but other reasons. And it's a pretty onerous thing for people to have their community and to have odor problems all the time. It's not pleasant, and it's a pretty big impact on their lives. So I think it's something to take seriously and hopefully avoid in future, as you suggest.
Thank you.
Thank you. I turn now to Director Kuhn. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I've had meetings with Byron before, and I guess the times that the smell comes out, I guess it doesn't last very long, because I offered to Byron at the time that if the smell comes up, he could give me a call. I live about 10-15 minutes away, so I could just go and see if the smell is there. But I guess the difficulty is, by the time he phones me, by the time I get changed, if you have to get changed or whatever, and go down there, maybe by that time the smell's gone again. So I drive through that neighborhood, I would say at least twice a week. I go through that just about every time I drive to Lake Hopperton or to Duncan. On the way back, I go through that area, and I have never ever smelled anything there. So, and it might very well be timing. I can't judge it, but I do a lot of biking. I bicycle through there, and I have never smelled the plant. So I have to take Byron by his word that the smell does occur, and it is dreadful, I imagine. I can't say anything to it because I haven't got it. I haven't experienced it at all. So, yeah, I'm much in favor of getting this resolved, because obviously there's going to be more houses there. There'll be more complaints, and it will not only reflect badly on us, and it'll reflect badly on the builder, on the contractor. So the problem has to be solved. It's and yeah, I wish we could do something that was a little bit, let's say, certain than what we've done so far. Thank you.
So I'd like to, I see no other hands up. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Burley, for representing your community, and hopefully with the consultants and more information coming forward, it's going to be helpful for them. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Ms. Harrison, I see a screen with a camera with a line through it. Does it mean anything?
Thank you, Madam Chair. IT is actually troubleshooting behind the
Okay.
scenes, so that's
Okay.
what that is.
Thank you so much. Moving on now, we turn now to correspondence. C1, request for grant in aid. Go ahead, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item C1 is a grant need request for Area C, Cobble Hill. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant need Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill, in the amount of $500 be provided to Malahat Lions for startup costs after 18-month break due to the pandemic.
It's been moved. Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Thank you so much, Ms. Harrison. We turn now to R1. Oh, sorry. Information. Sorry. There's IN1. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe Director Smith was having your attention.
Yes, yes. Go ahead, Miss Director Smith. I think you wanted something pulled out of here. Go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to pull number 3. Thank you.
Okay. So this was for information. So I'm seeing no other hands up. You go ahead with number 3. Go ahead, Director Smith.
Thank you. I would like to make a recommendation to the board that CVRD staff draft letters to BC Ferries and BC Ministry of Health, Island Health for financial assistance in funding refurbishment repairs to the Thetis Island Wharf.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on this recommendation? Go ahead, Director Acton.
I guess my I would wonder if it's maybe beneficial to actually state an amount that you would like from them. Like, have you discussed this with staff, and what would be the, because you have there is an initial cost, like there is a quoted amount. So are you looking for them to cover a quarter each, and then Thetis Island would cover 1/4, or perhaps we could be more specific so that you get what you want, what you're looking for?
Director Smith, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Acton. That's a beneficial thought, and I'm sure that Mr. Farquhar will take that into consideration when the letters are written. It's a complicated process. You know, unfortunately, the 275,000 grant application was unsuccessful with oversubscription. And so we're looking towards this as an option of looking for some funding. And they would have to decide basically how that fits into their financial structure of when the ferry is out of service and they require the wharf to drop passengers, foot passengers from Thetis Island and Chemainus in that, on that wharf, and also the emergency medical transportation off of Thetis Island also requires that. And we're just looking for a gift in kind or a donation for one time towards this. And I think that if we leave the amount open, it opens the discussion for further input on what we actually need and how much funding we would require from them. Thank you.
Okay, I'm seeing no other hands. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. We move now to reports to R1 and also UB1. Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have applicant for R1 and applicant for UB1 in the lobby. So I'll just admit them.
Yes, please. Director Acton.
Thank you. I thought these were coming back so that our own consultant could answer questions regarding these applications. Is Gandalf Consulting not attending the meeting?
Go ahead, Mr. McDonald.
Ms. Harrison, I've got an email from Mr. Symington, and maybe, I don't know if he's waiting to come into the lobby, but he's, through the delay, I can phone him to try and log in again, because that's the main reason. He's going to be here for both this one and R1. Do you see him?
Thank you through the chair to you, Mr. McDonald. He is actually in the meeting now.
Great. So do we have everyone that needs to be in the meeting now attending? I believe we do. So go ahead. Who's going to be taking this? Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is UB1. So this was the application that came forward on the July 21st. This is the application for SDC 2102 1800 Souk Lake Road. And we have, I see Raymond is here, and as well as Bob Symington. And I think Sarah was also supposed to be present, but I'm not sure if Sarah is here to answer questions as well. I have a short presentation if required, if there's any refresher needed on this particular one. But other than that, I can just turn it over for questions.
Does the committee need to be refreshed on this? Seeing as doesn't look like it. So go ahead. If there's questions for Mr. McDonald, go ahead. Committee, Director Acton.
Thank you. One question I do have is for SDC 2102. In the staff report, it hasn't been updated. It says the proposed measures to prevent silts and fines entering the riparian areas consist in that paragraph, and it says sorry, that's not it. Oh, the comment about like such measures as weather forecasts will be routinely monitored. This seems kind of arbitrary and not really I know that in Gandalf's report, he mentions it as not really a proper plan. So has that been addressed?
Mr. McDonald?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm going to forward this question to, this is a question for our consultant and or the applicant, but I think in this case, the consultant, there was materials provided that updated this one. I believe attachment C and D that were part of this report, but I will allow Mr. Symington to answer this question.
Go ahead, Mr. Simonson. You're on mute.
Thank you.
There you go.
We went through, thank you, I should have said. We went through 4 rounds of revisions on this application. That was one of the questions we raised. And the applicant has subsequently agreed to put in sedimentation ponds and ditches to control the runoff while the site's in operation. And this has been signed off by their registered professional.
Okay. Follow up, Director Acton. You're okay? I'm going to turn now.
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, well, it's almost the same lines too. There was a comment in that was kind of vague about wheel washing measures would be put in place if it was needed. Now, is that something the CVRD can request after the permit is granted?
Is that for Mr. McDonald or not sure? Go ahead.
I'll field that question.
Okay.
We can always be, I mean, part of the requirement of the bylaw is that not to be bringing dirt and there's supposed to be measures to control dust from the road. So if we witnessed that there was that happening, we've always found that everybody's been cooperative, and if any sites that we've told that they need to take other measures, they have, and we don't anticipate that would be an issue in this case.
Okay, go follow up, Director Acton.
Sure. I just have, well, I have one more question, if that's okay, and then I'll let other people speak. So these two, just to be clear, both of these applications are under our bylaw before it's been amended?
You, Madam Chair? Yes, that is correct.
Okay, I turn to Director Nicholson. Go ahead, please. Thank
you. I have several questions. The first one is just a clarification. In and I'm just referring to this old business, whatever it is, UB or whatever the
UB1,
UB1,
unfinished business 1.
In the latest materials, there was reference to a Spoke Environmental Advisory Limited groundwater impact assessment, and I could not find any such thing. Does anyone know anything about that?
Just looking through the documents here.
It was referenced by the applicant in the last paragraph of the latest thing that they gave us.
Yeah, there was let's see, where's the groundwater report? Sorry, I'm not able to find these quick enough. I'll just have to look at my review notes. And according to our notes on this, we had a report. There was a groundwater impact assessment report by McElhaney, and they said that the groundwater would not be impacted by the placement of the soils, but they did recommend that they establish a pH at the receiving site. And this is because soils, particularly for metals, the standards are based on the pH of the soils, and they can be different at the source site than they are at the receiving site.
Follow up, Director Nicholson?
So just to be, so there is no Spoke Environmental Advisory Limited groundwater impact assessment, I take it. Just McElhaney's. So I have a question for Mr. Symington, I guess. I would have questioned whether we would be expecting details on sizing of drainage ponds, et cetera, in relation to expected winter storms and so forth, to ensure environmental protection. Would that be the case or not?
In this case, they have a registered professional who has signed off on the report and said that the ponds will be appropriately sized, which does meet the requirements of the bylaw.
So then my question, maybe is the next question is to staff. How are we going to ensure that the registered professionals are doing their job?
Through you, Madam Chair, that we would review it, and if it's something that's out of our scope, we would forward it to our consultant to ensure that it's designed properly.
So you would expect them to provide you with design guidelines before they develop the pond?
I believe in this case, what they're referring to is that it's unforeseen what kind of weather is coming, and Mr. Symington can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's what the intent of this is as weather changes and what the site looks like will probably influence the design.
So
Follow up, Director Nicholson?
yeah, I'm having a really difficult time with this application. We're on a vulnerable aquifer and it's close to Shawnigan Creek and Shawnigan Lake. And there is really a lack of detail. And I know that we don't have the staff expertise to monitor the kind of technical stuff we know. So we're relying completely on the applicant and their hired people to do the right thing. And this seems to be in stark contrast to the next application that we're going to be looking at, which had considerably more detail. And it's just down the road, so they'll be experiencing the same storms and so forth. So I am really uncomfortable. And this is, I think this has gone back and forth. I know Mr. Symington in his report has noted that the fourth materials the fourth time have been submitted. So it seems like we're trying to pull teeth to get the details that we need to feel comfortable about this. And I'm just not feeling good about this application.
Mr. McDonald?
Just for the level of things that we're asking for, and I think Mr. Symington has actually stated this just now, what we're looking at is that they meet the requirements of the bylaw. So it's very difficult for us to ask for things beyond what's actually the requirements of the bylaw. So as Mr. Symington stated, they have met the requirements. I mean, we can ask and monitor for different things, but I guess what I'm saying is that they've met the requirements. So as far as their application goes, sort of where we're at and why we've recommending that this be accepted.
Thank you. I turn to Director Acton and then back to Director Nicholson. Director Acton?
Well, I was going to bring up a different point, so I don't know if
Go ahead, Director
wants
Nicholson.
to go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Director Nicholson. Another follow-up?
We're supposed to make sure in our bylaw that there are adequate measures for managing on-site drainage during operations and preventing negative impacts on stormwater runoff. And when I read Mr. Symington's report, he raises some issues, and I do not believe that they have been adequately addressed. And I am concerned in particular about the groundwater. And the McElhaney's report, although it doesn't come out and specifically state a series of recommendations or a strategy for preventing groundwater, he does make some comments, and one of them was related to the pH and so forth. And I think that the applicant, that should be addressed. There should be there should be details in there about how this is going to happen. And there aren't there, and they aren't there. And I am super concerned about this application. And we can require it as part of, we need to feel comfortable that it's meeting what we have specified in the bylaw. And I don't get that I don't get that level of comfort, quite frankly.
Director Acton, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I appreciate where Director Nicholson's going with this, and I'd be happy to send to refer it back. But I also wanted to discuss, there's no doubt that we're all concerned about the aquifers, and we're all concerned about the water, our waters systems, for our communities. And these two applications are really important. And if you could see, just with your, like, the distance to the lake is so close. I was up Baldy last night, and it is extremely close, and that's why it is of great concern. Where we have Stebbings Road is about 10 times further, and we're concerned about those. So it's extremely sensitive for the community. And I think I'm really disappointed in the communication to the community so far. I thought that there was going to be more education put forward to the community by now. I think there's an opportunity here, because it's the old bylaw. I believe we should have a community meeting that involves both of these applicants, just like a public hearing, and they can answer those questions for the community. And we should have like a three-prong approach to educating people on this. Have it in the newspaper, have a mail drop for the South, and hold a community meeting. And the CBRD is monitoring it, and we need to educate the community on that and what we can and cannot do. And this is a great opportunity. Or at least I think we should take this opportunity, because these two applications are really important to the community as well. So that's what I would like to see happen today.
Go ahead, Mr.
And
McDonald.
I feel like we owe it to them, and the CBRD is the community.
Mr. McDonald.
I'm aware that Mr. Lamb would like to speak to, and he hasn't been given the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Sorry about that. Mr. Lamb, go ahead, please.
Hi there. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Yeah, firstly, thanks to the board chair, directors and staff of CBRD for taking the time to review our application. My name is Raymond Lamb, for any of those who don't know me. I'm one of the owners and general manager of Altera Construction. Altera Construction has been and is a locally owned and operated company. We've been in operation for 10 years, and I've been in the civil contracting business for over 20 years. We have on board as well just Sarah from Aquaparian, who is a 25-year veteran of biology. So she is the principal and main biologist at Aquaparian, also available for questions if there's any. So firstly, I appreciate the time that's gone into vetting our application to ensure it's met the bylaw requirements, and we're absolutely willing to answer any questions that would help support the motion to pass that and approve it. There's been several questions asked, and I'm absolutely willing and open to receive those questions one by one if that would help the directors see it a little clearer than it's been seen currently.
Okay, so Mr. Lamb, or you've heard the questions, or is there anything that you would like to add to the questions from the directors that have currently stated their opinion?
Sure. Yeah, no, just from recollection. So please jump in if I've misunderstood something or fall out of sequence here. The first one was mention of monitoring of weather reports. So that is just a daily activity in the life of construction. So every day we wake up, or the night before we go to bed, we check weather forecasts to verify that the weather is consistent with our daily, with our planned activities for the next day. So it's no different than a pipe job, excavation, or a road job, or anything. So that is just best management practices for how construction's done. So that was the intent of that comment within our planned activities to monitor the sediment erosion control. Okay, now I'm just testing my memory here on the sequence of how this stuff happened. Sediment ponds. So yeah, so no, there's no specific requirement in your bylaw that specifies sizing, even whether or not ponds and or ditches are even required. So that is up to us as the applicant and our knowledge and experience in construction and management of job sites, as we do again in everyday construction life and activity that we abide by. We've always been diligent and continue to be so with regards to best management practices and due diligence. To speak specifically about why we don't specifically detail the size of ponds and ditches at this present time, I'll take a little bit of time to walk through the operation, the procedure by which we would manage this fill site, no different than any other one or a job site. It's going to be done in stages. So depending on what area is called or deemed to be the active fill area, that will actually be the surface area that will be used to calculate the size of that specific runoff pond and ditch. Where you wouldn't typically do that calculation on just a big general open area because it's not applicable. So as and when we phase the fill, just again, it's very methodically done. So you're not dropping bombs all over the site. So it's going to be specific to one specific area. We're going to fill in that area. As we're filling in that area, which would be deemed the active fill area, we will size and adequately create ponds to accommodate that specific area. And the ditching will also be accommodated to that specific area. Again, please jump in if there's anything here that I'm not clear about in terms of what you were trying to ask. The ponds.
Okay.
I think there was, clarification. So I don't know where that comment about Spoke Environmental came from, but Jane Yetter used to be the principal hydrogeologist at Spoke Environmental. She since then went to McElhaney, so she's one of the senior principal hydrogeologists at McElhaney now. Same woman, but she just, doesn't run her own business anymore, and she works for McElhaney. So I don't recall seeing any reference to Spoke Environmental in our current application, but I think it was properly referenced as the McElhaney hydrogeology report in our application.
Thank you. I just don't know if Sarah would like to add some too, or if you have some more.
Yeah, no, there was a bunch of lengthy discussion here about the pH. And again, just because I wanted to be absolutely clear on this concern or this issue of pH, I asked Jane for an email, I had emailed Jane of McElhaney for an explanation on it. Would it be okay if I just read the email? Because I don't want to mince the words in terms of this kind of technical question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so it says a few points addressing your email and the public concern about soil pH. I want to note that Altera is not importing contaminated soils. I understand they are screening and separating soils at the source before transport. We have not said that pH of imported soil is a concern to local groundwater quality. The mention of pH in the report is in the context of natural soil pH, determining the provincial soil standards for some contaminants of concern. Soil pH varies with location naturally. We are talking about natural variation in soil pH when discussing source versus receiving sites. The public concern was with importation of alkaline soils. I understand that in coastal BC, our soil tends to be acidic. Altera sources its soils from coastal regions of BC exclusively. I do not think that testing all imported soil for pH is warranted. There is also no provincial requirement of testing for soil pH for environmental protection. Yeah, she kind of goes into milfoil here too, because I was asking her about, but that's what she had there on the pH.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Sarah has anything to add, but I'll give her a chance if there's anything, and then I've got some more questions from directors.
No, I don't
Okay.
have anything to add to that. The pH issue was definitely a groundwater scope, and that Jane has covered that off.
Thank you, Sarah. I turn to Director Kuhn, who hasn't spoke yet. Go ahead, Director Kuhn.
Yes, I have a question to Mr. McDonald. Now, this application has been referred back, and now we're discussing it again. My question is, has the application or has the applicant fulfilled all the requirements for this application to be processed? Or are there still gaping holes in there? And can we get those informations? Are we in a position to actually require that? Or have the boxes all been filled?
Mr. McDonald, has this met the requirements for our bylaw?
Through you, Madam Chair, staff believes it has, and we have also used our consultant to verify that. And he has also, I believe, said that it is complete.
Okay, thank you.
Confirmed.
Follow up, Director Kuhn.
Well, in that case, I would like to move the application forward.
So you're moving UB1? Is there a seconder? Been moved and seconded. I still have some speakers. I'm going back to speakers that have spoken. I turn to Director Nicholson and then Director Acton.
I would like to follow up on this question of, it's not a question of pH. I think the issue is that Altera will be bringing in material from its own sites, construction sites, that are that may not be the right kind of material for the rural kind of a deposit area. And so what McElhaney has suggested is that it would be prudent for a qualified environmental professional to compare the soil quality results of the materials coming in with the provincial contaminated sites regulation standards for a receiving site. And I am curious as to why that has not been included in this application.
I'm not sure who can answer that.
Madam Chair, may I speak? It's the applicant, Raymond Lamb.
Go ahead, Mr. Lamb.
Thank you very much. I believe the email that I read just now is clear to indicate that there is no provincial requirement to test for pH. We are not bringing in contaminated soil. And Jane's very clear in that. I can read the email again if it would help provide more clarity. But
No, that's fine. That's
okay. I
thank you.
do believe that it's very clear in the sense of the regulations and that we are following them and complying with them in regards to the soil and suitability of which we are bringing into the site.
Thank you. I turn to Director Acton. Follow up, Director Nicholson.
Yes, I'd like to follow up with our consultant on that point. I read the report, and it's not a question of pH, it's about different metals and so forth in the material. So from our perspective, would it not be prudent for them to do what McElhaney suggests?
I've noted it in the report that was a recommendation by their consultant, but it's really not stated under the bylaw. So I would say that it was stated by their consultant as a measure that they should consider implementing.
Go ahead, Director Nicholson.
So I am really having a hard time here because my understanding is that we have a bylaw that is trying to protect the environment. And so it doesn't have a lot of specificity on the details necessarily that are required, but our job is to ensure that we have confidence that we will be protecting the environment. And if a registered professional suggests something, and then I think it's our job to make sure that it happens, is it not, in approving this? So if I was going to vote for this, I would like to have it added that this be a requirement. Otherwise, I will be voting against this application because I do not think that they have met the spirit of this bylaw.
Madam Chair, may I speak to
Yes.
that, please?
Go ahead, Mr. Lamb.
With all due respect, it cannot be made a requirement. it doesn't follow any sense of regulation with regards to the zoning bylaw, or sorry, your soil deposit bylaw. It doesn't follow any convention with contaminated sites regulations. There's no, again, with all due respect, there's just no application for it to be added as a requirement. And again, I'm totally happy to read this email again. And I specifically asked Jane to provide this language, and specifically indicates here that, you know, I do not think that testing all input soil for pH is warranted. Like, she's very clear. She is our professional hydrogeologist tasked with this job, and we are dedicated to protecting the environment in any of our applications and work that we do. We've gone to great lengths. Somebody indicated the repeated iterations of applications. That's because we continued, despite our original application, which had already been passed by staff and your consultant to have met all the criteria, yet we continued to work, and we will continue to provide additional clarifications as and when required. So again, we're here to help and work with the CVRD for the proper application of this soil bylaw, and we just hope our actions are true to that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lamb. And I will turn for one last time to Director Acton, and then I'm going to call the question. Whoops, no, we have Director Wilson now. Director Wilson and then Director Acton. Director Wilson, go ahead, please. Where'd you go?
Yeah, sorry about that. Press the wrong button. Yeah, Madam Chair, I was going to ask you to call the question anyway, because as Director Kuhn has pointed out, this has been backwards and forwards 4 times. And to be quite honest, we can go round and round in circles forever if we don't call a stop to this now and call the question.
Thank you. Director Smith?
Thank you. I'm just wondering if we should, Director Acton spoke about having some sort of meeting with staff and the 2 applicants, just because there seems to be a misunderstanding, or there needs to be more clarification within the communities to understand where we're at and what the bylaw actually is saying. And is
Sure, but
this
currently we're speaking to the motion
right?
that is on the floor. So maybe they can discuss that later. I mean, we have spoken about this quite a bit, and I understand that could happen. So I appreciate your comments for the community, but I think that is something that they can discuss at another time too. Director Acton.
Well,
we're speaking to the motion, and we've had a lot of points of clarification, and the bylaw requirements have been met.
There's still some points that have not been clarified for the community, and I actually think these are today the most important applications that we have looked at to date, and I don't appreciate the fact that we've already heard enough about them kind of comments, not to insult anyone, but these, I just think that people don't understand the severity of the location. They are so close to the lake. This is not something that should be taken lightly, and it should be really thorough. And so we're told to trust the professionals, and then we're given statements from some professionals that state some things, and then we're given other statements from another professional that states something else. So it is not so cut and dry, and that comfort, and it's also not very comforting when it doesn't actually appear like everyone's speaking the same language. So it's unfortunate that this has just that the motion on the floor is just to pass it. I would rather see it be referred back, and the pH part be part of the application, and the bylaw is meant to protect our communities and the aquifers and our water system. So not feeling very comfortable in that regard.
Madam Chair, may
you. I'm just going to call the
okay. Fair enough.
Call the question, Mr. Lamb. I think that we've had all the discussion that is needed. Some of my directors are requesting to call the question, and I will be calling that now. Director Nicholson? could you speak to the motion, please?
I would like to refer this back to staff so that the applicants can hold a public meeting.
It's been moved and seconded on the referral. Anybody would like to speak to the referral?
Madam Chair?
Just a second, I'm just gonna finish up here, Mr. Lamb. If that's all right. I'm gonna call Director Martman.
Yeah, I'd like to hear what the applicant had to say about,
You're cutting out, but I'll turn to Director, Mr. Lamb.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Once the question's on the floor, we don't take input from third parties
Thank you.
any longer.
This is a referral motion too as well, so thank you. Okay, I'm going to call the question on the referral back to staff again. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is defeated. Going back to the original motion that has already been moved and seconded, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? There's 3 opposed. Motion is carried. Moving on now to R1. Ms. Harrison?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R1 is a report from the Inspections and Enforcement Division regarding application number STC 2106. And the applicant, I believe, is in the room.
Yep, they're all still here. So I'm turning, we've had a long discussion on the same thing. Is there any questions for the applicant or staff? Director Nicholson?
I don't have a question. I would like to move the recommendation, but add subject to existing slopes as assessed by RISEC being regraded as per RISEC's recommendations.
Mr. McDonald?
I'd like to defer a question through to either our consultant or to Mr. Warwick, because I think this has been, I've been away for last couple of weeks, and I think that this has been addressed, but I'll put that through to Mr. Warwick to maybe he can comment on that.
Mr. Warwick?
Thank you through the chair. I did speak to the consultant and the applicant about this, and it will be corrected, and our determination was that no new material will be brought if the permit has been approved until the slopes have been corrected.
Okay.
So can I have, I'd like clarification.
I have Director Morrison, you're seconding the recommendation with the amendment.
That's correct.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded with your amendment. Director Nicholson, do you need to speak to it anymore?
No, that's fine.
Okay. So are we all clear with that? Director Acton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a motion to share after this is called. If you could come back to me, please.
Sure. Okay, I'm going to call the question. Does anybody need it read out again? Oh, Director Kuhn would like it read out again. Go ahead, Director Nicholson. Go ahead with what your recommendation was with your amendment.
That it be recommended to the board that soil deposit permit number SDC 2106 be issued subject to existing slopes as assessed by RISEC being regraded as per RISEC's recommendations.
Okay, so that is the motion we are currently voting on. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. I turn to Director Acton for another motion. Go ahead, Director Acton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My motion is that it's recommended to the board that the applicants of SDC 2106 and SD 2102, along with the CVRD, host a public meeting in accordance to the bylaw 4236 before the permits. Actually, I'll just end there. Sorry. Thank you.
So that's been seconded by Director Nicholson. You're looking for hosting a public meeting, information meeting with staff and the applicants on those permits.
And the soil bylaw in general.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? Director Kuhn, go ahead, please.
Well, we approved the application. So now we're kind of hanging on something on the tail of it, or I don't quite know what this is all about. I mean, the application's gone through now, that's it. So now we want to come up with something in behind and stipulate that this or this or this. I mean, if anything, that should have been part of the application, but it wasn't. So the application's gone through. So I can't see how we can now, I don't know, somebody explain that to me, please.
I'm going to turn to Director Morrison, then I'm going back to Director Acton. Director Morrison.
You know, this is, we've just passed resolutions or recommendations to the board to move these applications or these permits forward and that they be issued. If there's a general need for education of the community around the soil deposit bylaw, what we can and cannot do, the new version of it, that's fine. But a recommendation that these two be linked to a general education process, I don't know if it's proper procedure, but you know, in my perspective, that's causing unnecessary delay to this if the intent is general education of the community on our soil deposit bylaw. And it seems the cross purposes that we would have these soil deposit bylaws, which I think are based on the old bylaw. We've already got a new bylaw. Why would we be going to the community to educate them about a bylaw that we've already upgraded and amended? So I can't support this if this was amended to the director wanting to have a public information meeting for the purposes of providing information to the community on the new bylaw. I'm all for it. Let's do it. But tying this, as Director Kuhn indicated, to these applications is I think is unfair at this point.
Director Acton, I turn to you and think if you would
Sure.
like to amend your
Thank you.
motion.
I guess I can amend it, but I think, you know, we're really failing the community here. We've already promised that we would do some kind of education that hasn't happened. And these two applications are by far like 100 times more important than any of the other ones that we've seen to date. So I think we owe it to the community. And it's not about the old bylaw, but
So
I'm just stating my disappointment that, you know, I wasn't supported for the last, when we were discussing it earlier, but
are you going to amend your motion?
I think we already asked for education to the community.
But you have linked your motion with the bylaws that we've just passed. Do you want to make the motion that there's a public information on our new soil bylaw? Because you've actually linked it to something. You've linked it to your motion.
I wouldn't even call it a new soil bylaw. We should be educating the community on how the soil bylaw works. And those two applications are still part of our old bylaw. So the community should be able to ask questions about them. And the applicants could answer the community on their questions. Like these two locations are really important to the community from
Are you going to amend? Are you going to amend your bylaw? I mean, amend your motion, because that's what we're here for, right? You have a motion on the floor that connects that. Do we want to just call the question? I can call the question on the motion that's been moved and seconded. I will do that then. Or do you want to amend it?
Some support from my colleagues would be good, I guess, but you know, this was something I was looking for before we discussed them.
Director Kuhn, go ahead.
Madam Chair, we cannot keep discussing an application that's been approved now.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor. I can call that question then.
But let's take it away from the two applications. I mean, if we want to educate the public, that is fine. Let's have a meeting about that, but it cannot be connected to the two applications.
Okay, fine. Let's educate the community, because I think we're late on that now. We should have been doing this a while ago, and it's my belief that we already promised the community that that would happen.
Could you amend your motion then?
Okay, so
You
it's
want to amend
recommended
it?
to the
Chris?
board that the CVRD host a public meeting to educate the community on the soil bylaw.
It's just the CVRD. Your other motion said the applicant and just this.
Well,
Okay.
you just asked
so
me to remove them.
Yes. Yes, that's good.
And
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just a second, Director Morrison.
Second the amendment.
Okay, on the amendment, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Going back to the original motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. And we turn now to actually have a break. Come back in 10 minutes. We'll have a 10-minute break. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just testing this equipment. Can you hear my voice?
Yes, and I see that it did say on our screen that the recording has now begun.
I can't hear her.
Oh. Can everyone else hear me? Okay.
Challenge after challenge.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great.
I think I'm back.
Okay, and you can hear me because we could hear you before, but you couldn't hear me.
Awesome.
Okay. We're
Okay.
ready to rock and roll with R2. Go ahead, Ms. Harrison.
Item R2 is a report from the Inspections and Enforcement Division regarding the 2021 half-year bylaw enforcement report, and that is for information.
Great, thank you so much. Everybody has the report and has read the report over the weekend. Did you have any questions for Mr. McDonald? Seeing none? Oh, yes, we do. Director Smith, go ahead, please.
Just a minute, I'm just pulling up the report here. And I really appreciate looking at this. It's definitely interesting to see the different areas and where we are with some of our bylaw enforcement. I just had a question about, do we have enough bylaw enforcement? Are we, when I look at this breakdown, are there more complaints that are not, we're not able to get to based on the amount of time, bylaw enforcement time available? Or is this actually the complaints that are received, not necessarily looked into? Can you just clarify that?
I'm going to forward that question to Mr. Morano, who assisted with this report.
Mr. Morano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. These are all complaints that we action on. So we try to get to a complaint within 3 days. If it's an emergency, it will be sooner than that. If it's an important issue, some zoning issues can wait and other issues can't wait. So every issue is investigated, and there are no issues that we do not enforce or investigate, at least. I don't know if that answers the question.
Thank you. Director Smith, a follow-up. Go ahead, please.
Just to follow up, it's just I was wondering if there's staff time to cover all the complaints that you do receive, but that's good to hear. I just was looking at the area G and dwelling in an RV, and there was 4 in that 6-month period. How exactly have those been addressed? Have they moved out of the, where would something like that be at this time?
I can't comment on each individual one. They're probably at varying stages of an investigation, or one or two of them might be concluded. It's hard to say. And RV issues can be complicated. Sometimes we run into tenancy issues, and we have to respect the Landlord Tenancy Act. So those things, sometimes those issues drag things on a little bit longer than we would hope, but we are always on top of it to ensure that once that issue is resolved through the tenancy, that we are going to be pursuing compliance.
Thank you. Alternate Director Harrison, go ahead, please. You're unmuted.
I did learn my lesson, Madam Chairman. The question I had was with respect to soil depositors disposition in Area A. Whereabouts would those be in view of what's happened in Shawnigan? I see that Area A is at the top of the list right now, and I'm just wondering if we have any idea where those are.
Through you, Madam Chair, I will have Mr. Warwick speak on behalf of that, as he is our soil bylaw person.
Thank you, Mr. Warwick. Go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. There is soil deposit in the Goldstream Heights area in Area A, and on Shawnigan Lake Road in Area A, and on the Trans-Canada Highway Area A, and one down in the Bamberton area as well.
Follow up, Director Harrison, Alternate Director Harrison.
Well, no, I'm just curious to know. So the one on the Bamberton site, when that property changes hands, is that going to impact enforcement, et cetera, or the watching of what's happening there?
Mr. Warwick.
Through the chair, transfer of ownership does not affect our enforcement.
Thank you.
If it goes on First Nations land, does that affect it?
Through the chair, we do not enforce on First Nations reserve land, but if First Nations, for example, Malahat First Nation owns a property within the CVRD, we do still enforce on it.
Okay. Thank you. And I did see another hand. My apologies, I didn't write it down. So Director Morrison and then Director Acton.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to staff, and following up on Director Smith's inquiry, I'm looking at these numbers in regards to dwelling in RV, and I'd like a little bit of clarification and maybe some further comment from staff. So firstly, the clarification, is this dwelling in RV on roadways or road allowances, that sort of thing, or are these about people dwelling in RVs on private properties? And the comment that I'm trying to elicit is I look at the chart, and it indicates that there's some electoral areas that apparently haven't received any complaints whatsoever in regards to dwelling in RVs, but guaranteed there's folks living in RVs in every part of the regional district, including the municipalities, and this is becoming a bigger issue that we're going to have to address. So can I have a clarification, or were the complaints about dwellings, are people living in RVs as dwellings on private property, or were they perhaps at road ends and that sort of thing? And is it becoming a more widespread problem? Thank you.
Mr. Morano.
For you, Chair, they're exclusive to RVs on residential property, pretty much. Just because you don't see any statistics on some areas does not necessarily mean we're not investigating, because it could have happened late last year and we're still investigating. I'm not sure if that fully answers the question.
Yeah.
If I could, no, it's more a question. You answered the first part around on private properties, but also there's a lot more of this going on than 15 for the whole 6 months in the regional district would indicate. There's with the rental housing and affordable market housing prices, there's a lot more people turning to recreational vehicles, not just in tourism areas, but throughout the region. Are you seeing more of this throughout the region? Is it becoming a more prevalent issue?
Yes, 100%. And the reasons are changing. It goes from people looking for work, coming to the area to find a temporary place to stay. There are people who are visiting for longer periods of time than ever before. There's always been that recreational element out in the lakes that has been an issue historically, but it's becoming more and more prevalent. And the excuses I'm hearing more and more is that they cannot find an affordable place to live. It comes up over and over and over again.
Director Acton. I turn to Director.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry.
Go
There was
ahead.
some beeping going on in my house I had to fix. I think that this report brings up the conversation again that we should be having around how do we support bylaw better, with one being some kind of private investigator to be following up on some of these, because I know for a fact that some of these they get a file is closed, but the situation has not changed at all. So we have that, and then also looking at a more robust method of running our bylaw program. And my understanding that we were going to do a review of bylaw, and staff has taken that off the table despite I believe we funded it. So I think that is something we should be really considering for this year. I know that our community is really feels the pressure of that bylaw should be a lot stronger.
Thank you. I have Ms. Cheroff that would like to answer that. Go ahead, Ms. Cheroff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Director Acton, just to follow up on the comment on the bylaw service review.
Can I just interrupt you for a second? Your sound is really gargly, so I'm not sure if it's something you can fix from your end.
You're muted.
No, she's just trying to fix her sound.
Okay, is that better?
A little bit. Well, we can understand you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So through you to Director Acton, just on the comment on the bylaw service review, we are planning to conduct that review. That is in the works. And so that will undoubtedly provide some, I think, recommendations around staffing and additional resources for bylaw enforcement. Our bylaw enforcement staff do act on complaints, so they are not actively rooting out bylaw enforcement issues. And so when they go through the bylaw enforcement process and are effectively satisfied that an issue has been addressed, they will close the file and they will move on. If things are continuing, then it's really the onus is upon members of the public to submit new complaints, and we'll go through the process again. But really it does come down to resources. If the board wishes our bylaw enforcement team to be more proactive, that will certainly require more resources.
Thank you so much. I turn now. I have Director Kuhn, then Director Nicholson. Have I missed anyone? Okay, go ahead, Director Kuhn.
Yeah, Anne just said it all. We don't have a bylaw police. Our system is based on complaints from neighbors or people that report to us. So if we want to expand that, we're going to look at an awful lot more money to spend. So yeah, that's all I want to say.
To Director Nicholson, thank you. Director Nicholson, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I am curious what the complaints are under OCP.
Who would take that? Mr. McDonald?
I can answer that, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
OCP is almost exclusively riparian areas regulation, anything to do with development permit areas.
Great, because I was wondering where the riparian infractions were. That's good. It's disappointing that there's 11 shown here, because where we see 11 complaints, there's probably, 20 times that actually happening. I was fortunate enough this summer to go on a lovely boat trip around Shawnigan Lake with Director Acton, and then through Mill Bay with Director Salmon. And I am shocked at the amount of riparian and seashore degradation that building has created. And I know that's a problem out at Lake Cowichan as well. And granted, a lot of it is older stuff, but we really need to get more proactive on getting it fixed and dealing with it so it doesn't continue to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Now that was for information. We turn now to R3. Ms. Harrison.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R3 is a report from Development Services regarding application number COV 21B01. The applicant was in the lobby by telephone, but they have not been online for about a half an hour.
Okay. Should we go ahead, or do you want to go to the next report? Director Acton?
Well, I'm happy to move the staff recommendation.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Thank you so much. Moving on now to R4. I like this. Okay. R4.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R4 is a report from Development Services regarding application number COV 20 I01, and the applicant's in the lobby, and I will admit them.
Sure. This is area I believe, this one. Welcome. Go ahead, Mr. Limshu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of this application to release the covenant relates to the fact that restrictive covenant CA 4143299, which was registered back in 2014, has been made redundant by restrictive covenant CA 8386526, which was registered in 2020. The new covenant is more robust than the previous covenant, and it's site-specific as well as development-specific as well.
Thank you so much. It's been moved. Is there a seconder? Been moved and seconded. I don't know if the applicant wishes to add anything. Okay. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Thank you so much. Moving on now to R5. I hear somebody that's not on mute. I'm not sure if that's IT still. Okay. Here.
No, Madam Chair, it's not.
Okay. Everybody can check their mute buttons, please. Okay, so go turn now to R5.
R5 is a report from the Development Services Division regarding application number DP21A01, and I'll just check to see if the applicant is still in the lobby. Thank you, Madam Chair. The applicant is in the meeting.
Okay, thank you so much. Go ahead, staff.
So Rashinda Woods will be giving the presentation on this application. I'm just going to share my screen for the PowerPoint.
Welcome, Ms. Woods.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Right. Perfect. So this application is for 231 Trans-Canada Highway. Some of you may know it as the Malahat gas station on that property. Frank, if you could hit to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the subject property is located on the Trans-Canada Highway. It's close to the CBRD and CRD boundary. It's split zoned C3 and C4 and split designated highway commercial and tourist commercial. For the purposes of the application before you, the development is proposed within the C3 zone and the highway commercial designation. Development on the site is generally isolated to the westmost portion of the property, which I kind of, oh, Frank, can you just head back one slide?
Sorry.
Which you can note with where the blue arrow is there. And it does include the service station, which, as I said before, is the subject of the application. The remainder of the property to the east is heavily treed. All right, can you advance, Frank? Thank you. So the proposed development before you is at the Malahat gas station, and it includes the removal of the existing fuel pump, island, and canopy, and will be followed by the installation of a new underground 20,000 liter double wall tank diesel fuel tank, the construction of a new canopy, 2 upgraded fuel pumps, and upgraded infrastructure running from the existing and the new underground tanks to the pumps. New signage will be placed on the canopy and the existing building. The existing freestanding sign that some of you may be familiar with from driving the Malahat is going to be brought forward in a separate application, as the applicant is working with the Ministry of Transportation on the sign placement. Referrals were sent to the joint APC, Ministry of Transportation, and Fire Department. The joint APC voted to forward the application with the recommendation of approval. Ministry of Transportation had comments regarding the freestanding pylon sign, and is currently working with the applicant regarding the placement of the sign, hence why this is going to be coming forward in a separate application. They did not have any further comments regarding the development. So I put the site plan in there because it's important to know where things are, but the main thing to note on this site plan is just that everything is within the 6-meter setback as laid out in the zone. It's hard to look at, I get that. So if you advance to the next slide there, Frank, this is a rendering of what it will look like once the proposed development is completed. You'll note that I X'd out the little sign there. And if you advance one more slide, Frank, just your nighttime vision for you. And I think I have one more slide there, Frank. Sorry. So this is just showing the current highway access. Currently, you'll note in that first picture, there are barriers installed along the highway that prohibit any left turn right into the Malahat gas station. On the second image below, there is a left turn a little bit more northbound of where the gas station is, and it leads into the Malahat Chalet parking lot. And with that, I guess I'll open it up to any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Is there anyone that wishes alternate Director Harrison, then Director Nicholson, and then Director Acton? Go ahead, alternate Director Harrison. You're on mute.
Okay, my initial reaction to this was one of probably in favor, and with full disclosure, I do have a diesel vehicle that I use, and therefore he was going to open up another spot that I could go to. However, upon reflection, I'm not sure that this is such a great idea at this particular time. That what will happen as a result of opening the diesel, it will increase the amount of volume or the number of vehicles that are going to go in there. And this is a very, very tight area. The pictures of the drawings don't really do it justice, because right off at the edge of the gas station on the right-hand side, the south end, it drops off. So that makes it extremely difficult. So if I was to go in there as an example with my RV to fill it up, what do I do then if I've come from the north? Because there's nowhere to turn around. It just blocks off right there, and you've created a problem, and you can't cut across easily because you've got the deceleration lane in there for people who are heading up Island, heading north out of Victoria. And to me, it's creating a very dangerous situation in quite a congested area. In addition to that, there has been a little, I guess, mobile restaurant that's opened adjacent to this property that's generating traffic in there and increasing it. And when I read the applicant has stated that they plan to upgrade the station at some stage. And to me, it would be wise to wait until that particular time to do that, because there really needs to be a traffic study done there. And I was quite surprised to see that the Ministry of Highways was more interested in the sign placement than ensuring the safety of the people who are coming in and out of that particular site. And it may have just been an oversight, but there really truly does need to be a study done of how to make that a safe area. If you're heading south and you turn off the highway, you have to make an immediate right-hand turn once you get across, which is on a bend, by the way. And there you are, you're jammed in there with cars coming up who may have used the deceleration lane or coming out of using the post office. So to me, I think one of two things has to happen here. It either should be denied, in my opinion, until it's upgraded, or that it should be referred back to staff to work with the Ministry of Highways to come up with a traffic study to indicate that it's truly safe for people to be going in and out of there. I'm not opposed to business. It's great. I actually support the facility, but I am just concerned that we're going to create a real safety issue there if we start getting larger vehicles, because diesels certainly are larger than the average car. Volkswagen kind of took care of that. So it's now basically trucks that are the diesel units in there, and that there just isn't space in there to do it.
Thank you. I turn to Director Nicholson, Acton, and Wilson. Have I missed anyone? Go ahead, Director Nicholson.
Thank you. Yes, I do agree. I concur completely with what I've heard so far. This is actually an application to expand an existing facility, yet there is no comprehensive plan for the whole thing. So we're talking about a development that's going to happen down the road, and it's being done in a piecemeal way without providing us with adequate information about whether it will work or not. And I understand that a traffic study is definitely needed, but not just one accessing on and off the highway, but how the vehicles and pedestrians can move around safely in that area. And it has to be done in conjunction with the hotel and the restaurant, which are, you know, right now it operates as one big movement area. And it's, you know, we have a development permit guideline, I think, that's related to pedestrian safety with much bigger vehicles moving in there. I just don't think that this is a good plan so far. And so I would definitely like to see it referred back to staff or denied at this point.
I turn to Director Acton.
Yeah, so I was going to say almost identical to Director Nicholson, but of course I never say it as eloquently. But yeah, I'd like to see this either referred back or we deny it. And most importantly, we need to see the whole plan so that the community can you know, have what's the best design for the community and the way we want to see that property grow in the future. So I guess I'd be willing to refer this back to staff so that staff can work with the applicant. And
I have a few people on the speakers list. Can I come back to you?
Sure.
And I have not asked the applicant if they wish to add anything yet either. So I'll turn to Director Morrison, and then I'll turn to the applicant.
Thank you,
I'm sorry, Director. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I was next on the list.
Sorry, I struck you off. Yes, I was playing. Yeah, you're next. Sorry.
Yeah, easily done.
Now, Mr. Director Martman. So I have Directors Wilson, Morrison, and Martman, and after Director Wilson, I'm going to turn to the applicant if he wishes to. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Easily done to strike people off. It's one of those.
Sorry.
No
Yeah, on my
problem.
list, I did, yes. Sorry.
Not a problem. Yeah, I understand the traffic concerns here, but I'm also a supporter of this business. They do actually have the cheapest gas prices on the island anywhere by at least a cent. So I am in support of this. But having said that, I don't want to see this denied. I would much rather see it referred back to staff for a traffic study. I think it would be a big mistake to deny it at this stage. Let's go and do a little bit more study and then come back and look at it again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I turn to the applicant. If he is in the meeting,
Yes, I am.
would you
Hopefully you
like
can
to
hear me
add
well.
would you like to add anything at this time?
Yeah, just I appreciate the concerns. As we all know, this is an existing site, so the traffic concerns are already there. Adding the diesel obviously adds a little bit of, like they say, bigger vehicles into the area. I do trust that people have the sense actually to not clog the way when when there are people there, right? The one thing, like I said, it's an existing site, so it's not like we're introducing new traffic there. The biggest thing for us is number one, if you look at the canopy, it's a wooden canopy. We're proposing to replace it with steel, and I know for a fact there was a fire there just recently, and if that was a wooden canopy that this has, it would have been very, very dangerous. Uh, we are also introducing double wall piping. We are introducing monitoring for environmental purposes. We could wait and do this later, but we're basically introducing the environmental risk. Well, I shouldn't say introducing. There's the risk that you have there right now. It's not that it will happen. It's just your potential is higher. As far as doing the building together with the petroleum, it's a matter of financial right now. We just want to do it. Well, not I, but our client just wants to do it one piece at a time. But they do. Mr. Zhao is actually planning on doing an upgrade to his store, so it will be part of and parcel of the full development. But at the end of the day, like I said, as far as traffic, it's an existing site. Yes, we're introducing a little bit more to it with the diesel, but we have to understand people are already pedestrian. We're not changing anything. It looks the same. We're just trying to make it bigger, a little bit more safer actually, with the LED lighting on the canopy shining down, um, and environmentally better.
Thank you so
Uh,
much. Thank you. Can you
yeah,
pronounce your last name for us?
yeah, it's
I'm always intrigued. You can see why. I'm always
yeah,
intrigued with last
yeah,
names.
yeah. It is Eliscopides.
Eliscopides.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you so
IL.
much.
It's ILI.
Yeah, I see
Yeah,
that. I
yeah,
can relate to that I too. Okay, so I'm
yeah.
turning now to Director Morrison, Martman, and then back to alternate Director Harrison, I believe, and Nicholson. Back to Nicholson. Go ahead,
Um,
Director Morrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to Jerry. I'm not even going to go at that last name. So I'm obviously in a little bit of a different mindset here because I'm reading through the staff report again and looking at the requirements of the development permit, and nowhere in the development permit does it say anything about traffic studies. If this were rezoning to a new use, well, yeah, let's fly at her. Now, obviously, the Ministry of Transportation is involved in this, and I'd love to hear from staff if when I look, we've got general guidelines around the paved area. We've got building design, which is going to be addressed a little later, but they're talking about fuel pumps and the likes. Landscaping, rainwater management, environmental protection designs, which is what this is about, outdoor lighting, parking, vehicular access, and pedestrian guidelines. So I look at this and say, okay, are we again in a development permit, not a rezoning, but in a development permit, asking for something that's not required of a development permit? It's required of zoning and new use and all of that sort of thing, but it's, we're asking for something that is beyond the scope of what at least I'm reading in the staff report says is appropriate for a development permit. The development permit has specific guidelines in here that we're addressing, and I don't see the staff have said a whole bunch about traffic. And when I think about the traffic, there's been, what is it, $28 million spent in traffic mitigation measures and barricades and the likes and improvements through that stretch of the highway. There's got to be information available on what the flow around there is and numbers and counts and all of that stuff. So yeah, I guess I'm suggesting that if this committee isn't prepared to move forward on this for a real good reason, then sure. But otherwise, I don't think we should be subjecting the applicant to go out and commission a new traffic study when I'm sure that there's lots of material available on the traffic through that area with the provincial ministry, who I'm sure they're dealing with already. So I'm just asking my colleagues to consider, we've got a development permit, staff written to the requirements of the development permit. If we're going to refer it back to them, let's make sure we're referring it back for a reason that is within the scope of the development permit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Morrison. I turn now to Director Martman. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, and I would like to follow up on Director Morrison's with a question to staff in trying to understand this from my perspective. Where does a traffic study fit into it? Because it's not mentioned in the staff report. And at what part of the process, as this developer or this owner develops the property, would that come in from your perspective? And perhaps this is something, I would hate the owner put a lot of money into doing this and then finding out that down the road that his later developments get denied because he's got issues with traffic flow. So I'm just curious on your perspective.
Ms. Woods?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we did refer this application to the Ministry of Transportation because we flagged that there could be potential issues here. I actually reached out to Ministry of Transportation multiple times as well and have been in contact with them through this process. When I asked the question, do we require anything other than looking at the sign? They came back and said, no, the only thing that we're concerned with here is the sign. I can't speak to what information they have on their side that made them come to that conclusion, but that's the directive that I got from them. As we don't really have any DP guidelines around that, I don't believe, there's a place in a DP that we would be looking at a traffic study, but I might just defer that to Frank if he's got anything to add.
Mr. Limshu, would you have anything to add?
The only thing I would like to add is just to clarify, with respect to traffic studies, generally we require them when there's a change of use. So as alluded to by Director Morrison, it's OCP amendments, rezonings. We ask for those studies at that point in time. As the committee is aware, when it comes to development permits, we are a little bit constrained in terms of what we can and can't ask for. And the fundamental principle is to determine whether or not the application meets the guidelines outlined in our OCP. And typically we're reviewing it, we're just looking at the site itself. Whereas when you're contemplating a change in land use, you look beyond, typically you look beyond just the site. You look at the surrounding area and the context to make sure that the land use change makes sense. As Ms. Woods indicated, we did reach out to highways, because at the end of the day, they are the experts with respect to the access and egress with respect to along the highway. as well as with respect to traffic volumes along that highway.
Okay, thank you. Director Kuhn, then Director Nicholson, and then alternate Director Harrison, and back to Director Wilson. Oh, Director Smith. So I'm going to turn to Director Kuhn and Director Smith, who haven't spoken, and then I'll go to Nicholson and alternate Director Harrison.
I'd
Go
like
ahead,
to
Direct.
move the application forward.
It's been moved. Is there a seconder? It's been moved and seconded. Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and I still have a speakers list. So I turn to Director Smith.
Thank you. My question is, and maybe it's too late to ask this question, but when I was reading the report, it said that with regards to additional environmental testing done on the site, phase 1 and 2 environmental site assessments, ESA, have been completed for the site in 1993, 2001, and 2017. To me, was the last one 4 years ago that testing was done would be my first question, and then I have a follow-up question.
Ms. Woods?
Through you, Madam Chair. So the applicants did provide a precision leak test, I believe it's called, at the beginning of this project, which basically tested the existing infrastructure to ensure there wasn't any leaks that were showing. So that testing has been done. In terms of the larger site environmental assessments, I believe the last one was in 2018. But as I mentioned in the report, all of those reports have come back to say that they're all within the acceptable ranges.
Follow up, Director Smith, go ahead.
So I was also looking at the parking. It seems that in the future there's going to be some sort of development there, and I was wondering about parking because it's so congested in there, and public safety. I mean, I've driven in there to get gas, and I just find like there's people everywhere, there's cars everywhere, there's big RVs trying to get in there, people trying to get to the restaurant, people, and it's just not a comfortable situation for a pedestrian. And I'm just also wondering where exactly is the parking? Because right now there's a little mini mart there, correct? And so does it not have requirements for parking along with the gas location so that people can wait to get into the gas pump? Can someone just clarify the parking situation? I'm not very comfortable.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as it stands, they did meet the requirements. They have one parking space in front of the mini mart there. And then they do have some parking spaces on the downhill slope side. The way the properties are set up, because they're sort of treated as though they're one throughway. When I was there on my site visit, I noticed that there were people parking on the adjacent property, which doesn't necessarily count towards the parking, but even excluding that, they did meet the requirements of the parking in terms of numbers.
Thank you. And I turn now to Director Nicholson, then Wilson, then alternate Director Harrison. Go ahead, Director Nicholson.
I have a question for the applicant, if I may.
Go ahead.
I am wondering why they're not taking the opportunity to replace the old existing tank for the regular gasoline when you're doing all the other upgrades.
Like Ms. Woods said, we did check the tanks and its integrity, and it is intact. To do that, it will actually create more chaos in that site without really adding any value to it. That's why we tested it first. That was the first thing that we did. We made sure that with the precision test that it is intact, and in fact it is.
Follow up, Director Nicholson?
Yeah, I think my comment is I think we need to refer this back to staff to work with the applicant to come up with a plan that indicates how the traffic is going to be handled on site, as well as the coming in and off the highway. I am really concerned about this, and I think it's in the best interest of the community, and I think it's definitely in line with the development permit area related to parking, vehicular access, and pedestrian guidelines.
Wilson?
So I would like to refer this back to staff as a motion.
It's been moved and seconded on the referral. Okay, now speaking to the referral, go ahead. Who would like to speak to the referral? Go ahead, Director Acton.
Oh, hang on. Have I been forgotten again?
Well, this is on the referral. Did you want to speak to the referral?
Sure, yeah.
Just
Otherwise, I
because
go
it
back to the
came
back
up.
of the.
Okay, go ahead. I thought you were on the regular speakers list.
I am, but
go ahead. On the
okay.
referral.
Okay, on the referral, I was originally in favor of a referral, as I mentioned. I am no longer in favor of the referral, as has been mentioned by the staff. They've approached MOTI. MOTI have no concerns about this. This is a good proposal. It's met everything that's going on. It meets, it's not, as Director Morrison has pointed out, this is not a development permit. It's a I can't even remember the word of it.
It is follows the guidelines of a development permit. It is a development permit.
That's right. And to be quite honest, everything that should be done has been done by the staff who are involved. And to refer it back yet again, I think would be a mistake. I will not be in favor of referring this back to staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I have alternate Director Harrison on the referral, and then Director Acton on the referral. If I've got my...
Well, Madam Chairman, things have changed dramatically with respect to safety on that road. I'll give you an example. They opened up the Malahat Skywalk. In the first 2 weeks, they had 43,000 people go through there. If you drive the Malahat and you take a look, the sign says you cannot turn left if you're going north into that skywalk. You have to go forward and go through the Malahat Chalet. That traffic turns right into the entrance, the narrow entrance where this gas station is located. The Highways Department certainly haven't taken that into consideration. And I think what we're talking about here is safety, and I find it absolutely appalling that in the need to rush this thing through by some of the members of the board of this committee, they're not taking all the factors into consideration that would make this or could make this a safer area for the people who are using that facility. So it's just they've now made that center kind of a focal point in terms of traffic coming through there and around there. We've already had one serious accident out of that gas station, or soon after the so-called new highway was built that Director Morrison talked about, who went out the wrong way and went head on into a vehicle coming down the deceleration lane. So there are things happening there, and I think it's prudent and wise for us to have the traffic people take a look at it. There are concerns, there's safety of our community involved here, and I would certainly encourage us to refer it back to the staff so they can take a look at it.
Thank you. Director Acton?
Thank you. I completely agree with alternate Director Harrison and the referral. I also believe the community has a interest in understanding how the property wants to be developed in the future. And we're in the form of community planning, so we should be able to ask for that information.
Director Martman?
Sorry, it took me a second. Thank you. I guess there's two questions that come to mind when on the referral, and that is if it's going to be referred back to staff, I'd like to specifically know what part of the DPA that this is being asked to look at again, because I'm not sure where that is. So that's the first question to try to understand this. The second thing is that if there isn't a specific part of the DPA that we're referring back to staff to correct, then are we asking applications that come in from DPAs to say, well, you have to do something like this because before we will approve something? Is it like a quid pro quo going on? And that's a question to staff. So first of all, is there something specific in the DPA that we're addressing with the referral?
Okay, I don't know who would like to answer that. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Limshu.
Sure, I'll certainly take
Okay.
a crack at it. Yeah, so within the development permit guidelines, there is guidelines related to parking, vehicular access, and so forth. I'm just trying to remember the exact section, but there is a component that speaks to that. But again, within the guidelines itself, it discourages direct access on the highway. In this case, we're dealing with an existing situation. But within the guidelines, it talks about approval from highways, and I believe the intent was, given that it is the highway and it is their jurisdiction, the CVRD relies on that agency to provide comments as it pertains to vehicular traffic along the highway. So when we send our referrals out to the different agencies, which includes highways, we do rely on those agencies to flag concerns and comments with respect to the application. And as Ms. Woods indicated, after having a number of discussions with them, they only seem to be concerned about the signage as opposed to the existing access. I certainly appreciate the comments that the committee have raised with respect to traffic and safety. Certainly we don't want to make the situation worse. By the same token, we do rely on our government counterparts for assistance because we do not have traffic expertise on staff.
Okay, does that answer your questions, Director Martman?
Well, I just as a follow-up, so there may be something in the DPA that you could look at to explore further with the applicant. Is that what you're saying, or is there anything specific?
Yeah, it's I'll admit the wording within our OCP guidelines could be a bit clearer. But I guess when you read through it, there is a reliance on approval from Ministry of Transportation.
So I guess is that you're saying that there isn't something specific that we could go back to refer this to you for? Like if we're going to refer it, I want to know what we're referring it for. And I'm not hearing anything specific.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Woods. Did you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, while I'm not a traffic expert by any means, the portion of the application regarding the freestanding sign that is there right now, that freestanding sign is actually in the road right of way. So the Ministry of Transportation has basically pulled that and said, you have to move this sign. So while it may not be everything the committee is looking for, that island with the freestanding signs that shows the pricing, the intent would eventually be for that to be removed so that the sign is located somewhere else on the highway. And that does help a little bit with the traffic flow through that area. So I just wanted to make that more abundantly clear. Sorry, I don't think I made that clear the first time.
Okay, thank you. Alternate Director Harrison and then Director Morrison.
Yes, I would refer the South Cowichan Rural Development Permit Area 24.4.9A, parking, vehicular access, and pedestrian guidelines. And it states right in there that access and egress to major network roads should be provided by local road and so on and so forth, and safe and approved by the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. Direct access from the Trans-Canada Highway or a major network road should be avoided. And I would argue that if you've got the volume that is now going through that parking lot in that area, that it would come under that, and that we do in fact have the right to ask for them to review it. So we're referring it back to staff to work with the Ministry of Highways, is ask them to review to ensure that that's a safe situation. That's all we're asking.
Thank you. I turn to Director Morrison. Go ahead, please.
I think I'm thinking along the lines of Director Martman here, and that I've got that bit right in the staff report out about parking, vehicular access, and pedestrian guidelines, and the line that strikes me or that jumps out to me is, and this is a development permit. We're permitting them to do something, and it says, the very last sentence of that says, no changes to the site or parking layout are proposed with this application. So my question to staff, if there's no changes proposed and we refer this to staff and we go and have the conversations with Ministry of Transportation, with no changes being proposed, that essentially means the status quo stays in force. Are we in any way able to compel changes when there's no changes being recommended under this section that alternate Director Harrison just read out?
Mr. Limshu or Ms. Woods?
Yeah, so again, I'll take a stab at this one. I mean, there is a change being proposed in that there's an additional pump being added. You know, in terms of the actual layout and the flow of traffic, there is no change. The access and egress will remain the same. The travel aisles will remain the same. You know, and Ms. Woods can correct me if I'm wrong, but in the discussions we've had with the Ministry of Transportation, like, you know, they've made comments on the location of the sign, but I don't believe they've actually explicitly stated that they have any issues with the access and egress of the site.
Okay, I'm going to call. Oh, go ahead, Ms. Woods.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I was just going to confirm what Frank had said, and I did specifically ask them, aside from the sign, do you have any other comments? And they said no other comments. So,
okay, thank you so much. I'm going to call the question on referral. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion has been defeated. Now back to the original motion on the floor. If anybody wants to move and second. Go ahead, Director Kuhn. Do you move the recommendation? Okay, it's been moved. Ms. Harrison?
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Okay.
It's already been moved and second.
Oh, right, because we went to referral. My apologies. Sorry. It's been a while. Sorry. Okay, I'm going to call the question on this application. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Thank you so much. What is our time? We need another 10-minute break. See you in 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are live.
Welcome back, everyone. Do we have any questions for question period? Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have none.
Thank you so much. So from this, we'll go directly into our next to closed. So a motion to go into closed under whatever it would be, Ms. Harrison.
It is under. Good question.
I switched my screen to the closed meeting, so.
It's under sub 90, Community Charter Section 91, subsection 1G, which is a legal action.
Thank you. Is there a mover? Moved and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. So we go out of this and move into our next. Thank you so much. See you in a minute.